Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair, and this week the title's called How to Buy a Car the Smart Way. We're talking about cars. We love them. You should buy them. Let's do this.
So, Michael, we are a couple of finance bros living in a finance world.
We are.
We talk about financial freedom.
Yeah.
Cars don't really help you get financially free.
They don't. What type of black European car do you own?
It's not black. It's a nice silver.
It's a gunmetal grey, actually.
Yeah. And it's nice, but I did drive my 1996 Honda Civic for many a year. So today we're talking about cars because it is one of the biggest financial purchases that most people make. And usually, a car won't last your whole lifetime. And owning a car, if you do it the wrong way, can result in you being financially trapped. I mean, how often do you see somebody when you see the balance sheet and they've got a car and they've got a car loan and that's it?
Yeah, and the worst ones is when I actually used to work at the bank as a junior retail banker starting out, and you're looking at personal finance for a lot of people, and you'll just see $20,000 car loan, and the car, worst case, they've crashed it and they don't have it anymore, and they're driving another car and still paying this loan off. Ooh. That is super common and really crappy. So just 100% on tick. It's a bad way to do it. You got to be smart about it.
Shame on you for giving them all that debt at 15%. Okay, so the question is, as a good general rule, how much can you afford to spend in the car? Yeah, look at this. I'm just practicing my what's it called?
Chest flies.
Yeah. So
finance bros living in finance.
Yeah, just chest every day. We've got an actual laugh at Ravi in the back. So first one, Dave Ramsey's. Mike, have you ever listened to any Dave Ramsey clips? Oh, honestly, all of them. Somebody calls up and be like, "Hey, Dave, I'm 21 years old. I have $300,000 in student loans. I have $300,000 in credit card debt, and I'm 7 years through my psychology degree. How can I help?" They're great videos. Honestly, if anyone's in that situation, let's do those episodes. But Dave Ramsey, very big in the US, believes that all your vehicles should be worth less than half of your take-home salary or up to 5% of your total net worth. That means if you make $100,000 a year, you approximately take home $71,000 after tax. So your vehicle should be worth less than $35,000. If your net worth is $1 million, your vehicle should cost no more than $50,000. Michael, what do you think of David's thoughts?
Dave sounds like a loser.
What?
Nice Civic, dickhead. Sorry, you can beep that out, Ravi.
Yeah. Do not touch the beep button, Ravi. We are unclipped around here. I actually don't mind the rule at all, to be honest.
Yeah, look, I guess as a general rule of thumb, it's fine, right? And at the end of the day, I love cars, right? I get a sense of enjoyment, and I know Ravi's nodding along as well because he's just bought a black European car and now parks in Britomart. But you get a sense of enjoyment out of it. I love it. But you do need to be a little bit smart about it. And having some rule of thumbs in place here is probably not a bad thing.
Yeah, your Mazda hatchback is beautiful. So
it's actually a Civic.
So that's one rule, the problem with this, which is all linking back towards a financial plan, it's all relative. If you can achieve all of your financial goals, or if one of your goals is to buy this car and you spend 50 grand or 100 grand, whatever, and can still achieve all of your goals, it's kind of like fitness, right? If you go, I'm never going to eat a pizza because I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to hit my health goals, that's not going to hurt your health goals. It's what you do outside of that one big purchase or that one big pizza.
Yeah. And, there are some rules. And we've got one here, the 24-10 rule. So, 20% down payment, you should be putting as a minimum if you're putting it on finance. A 4-year loan term. I think this is the big one. Sometimes we see people put these on their mortgages over a 30-year loan term. Do not do that. You pay so much interest. And then 10% of pre-tax income, right? So total transportation costs, including the car payment, shouldn't exceed 10% of your pre-tax income. Yep, they're nice headlines, but at the end of the day, it's got to fit with your, whatever you're doing in terms of the purchase, the finance, however you structure it, has got to fit with your plan, your goals, and your timeline.
Yeah, my opinion on this is that the 24/10 rule I don't like.
Yeah.
I think the only time you should be putting a car on finance if it's tied to a business and you're getting interest deductibility as an expense, and then you think around the cash flows on the business and how you can be smart on that side. The other thing you just got to be careful of because I mean, most people aren't going to be debt free, right?
Yeah.
Even if they're not borrowing at 15%, they're borrowing at 6%, but then you're holding this debt for a long period of time. So you actually do have to think of the total interest cost over the whole time you have the loan.
Yeah. And if we're talking about putting a car on the mortgage, and if you've got a mortgage, any kind of thing you do is a balance of, do I pay the mortgage off? Everything goes on the mortgage
financial
one
plan.
way or
It's
another.
all relative.
But if you're putting it on the house for a lower interest rate, we're back to that 4 or 5 year loan term, right? This is not a 30-year loan term on these things.
Yeah. So new or used is the other question. I think we don't recommend buying a new car really ever unless you are pretty much financially free. In the notes, we've got more than $1 million.
I think
if you're living in Auckland, you still might have over $1 million of debt in that situation.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be quite close to financially free to be able to do this. If we bring up the graph, used cars usually depreciate most cars depreciate the fastest in their first 5 years, dropping 40 to 50% of their value. Mike, my analysis on this graph that we've got up, 3 to 6 years appears to be a bit of a sweet spot. What do you reckon?
Yeah, and for European cars, you might still be under warranty if you're purchasing those. So you've got to look at that as well as what is going to be the cost of maintaining the car. So like I got my new car and then it had to have the steering replaced in it.
Poor Mazda hatchback.
Yeah. And that was like a 15 grand cost, but it's still under warranty. So, luckily I didn't have to pay for it. But yeah, look, you've got to be, buying a new car, the moment, we all know this, the moment it rolls off the lot, it loses like 20, 30% of its value straight away.
Yeah, very interesting when you talk to people who buy a car they probably shouldn't be buying. It's a bit of a stretch. And then they bitch to you going, my new tires cost me $2,000 or whatever. It's like, what were you expecting?
Those Pirelli P0s, baby.
So the other thing is try and sell a car before it hits $100,000, Ks, as it depreciates rapidly once it hits over 100,000 Ks.
Yeah. Major services as well. I talked about a $15K bill for the steering rack, but I had to change the oil on it. I think that was like $1,800 for like oil and filters and stuff. So, you've got to look after the asset as best you can, but there are going to be major services that incur costs from time to time as well.
Yeah. The other thing, just like I was talking about the tires, there are lots of other expenses that we don't really consider. We just think about the cost of the car, but obviously the financing, Mike, car financing rates can be reasonable or very, very expensive.
Yeah. And it's like, I guess at the end of the day, it's a risk thing, right? Because it's asset finance. So it's going to depend on the asset a little bit. And then it's going to depend on the credit worthiness of the person taking out that finance. And often people in lower socioeconomic positions are having to finance cars, and they're not financing a brand new Mercedes or Porsche, whatever you bought. They are just financing something to get them from A to B. And kind of a bit of the trap they fall into here is they buy a cheap car, finance it. The cheap car is old and inevitably breaks before they've paid it off, and they have to go out and do the same thing again. And it can be a bit of a poverty trap around these sorts of things. So there are certain instances. I know you sort of said the only time you'll accept putting a car on finance is if it's under a business, but there are certain instances where people do have to finance cars.
I accept that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the interest rate on those loans can be 6.5% to 15%.
Yeah.
The other thing is gas mileage. So I got a new car. So I've been driving my 1996 Honda Civic, where I would park around the corner from clients' houses, and they'd be like, "James, come down the driveway," and I'd be like, "No, I'll park up the top around the corner, thank you." Yeah. Sold it in 2020.
It was riddled with ants, by the way.
Yeah, riddled with ants in the summer. It was a whole thing, and then sold it to a scrapyard. He brings the thing. They're like, "We'll give you a free quote," but he brings the truck, and I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna want to take away the car." And he goes, "I'll give you $100 for it." And anyway, I used my best negotiation skills, got it to $200. We went out big that night.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest moments in my life has you and I. We've just finished. We're halfway through a 2-month, 3-month boxing camp for a fight. It is about 30 degrees. The ants are everywhere. We are stuck in traffic. We've just had the crap beaten out of us for like, an hour and a half. We trained at 3 o'clock or like 4:30 in the morning as well that morning. We are so tired. We are exhausted. We are sitting in traffic on Custom Street and steam just starts billowing out of the Civic.
Yeah.
And, honestly, it was like the comic relief that I needed at that point to get me through the day. It was like freaking out. We're like, oh my God, we're going to blow up in traffic.
Yeah. So I held on to that car for a long time. And I got given a lot of crap about that car for a long time. And eventually I did get rid of it and bought a Mercedes C200. And I tell you the funny thing, Mike, the person...
Why did you go to talk about the MG in between?
Yeah, I had like an in-between step where it was like a sensible MG. Once again, giving crap about the MG. MG's such a sensible car. But the guy was like, this is not a hybrid. It's just got like 2 batteries and they do something. Clearly, I'm not a car person. So we're filming this on the 18th of November. I haven't filled up my car since the 29th of September.
Huh. Weird, because I took it to South Auckland the other day. Back.
Yeah. So my point back here is gas mileage by the car can be very, very different. If you've got that new G-Wagon, it is a gas guzzler versus, something else is, the Tesla.
Maybe you upgraded your Porsche
different.
wagon for a G-Wagon and you thought, man, I just want to pay a little bit more at the pump.
Speaking of G-Wagons, insurance costs are obviously going to be through the roof. You got to think about car rego, car wafts, depending, you might finance a car that's quite old and then trying to keep it up with the waft, the maintenance costs, the repair costs are going to be quite high. If you can get it under warrant and get some sort of servicing for a new car, then obviously that's a really good thing to do.
And the insurance cost for younger people, basically under 25 for driving a car is absolutely out of control, especially if it has a remotely reasonably sized engine in it. So, you really have to factor that in as well.
So coming back to my mate Dave Ramsey's, he says, in a perfect world, the car that you could afford is the car that you could buy outright in cash. That's right. No loan, no payment, nothing. Just buy a car that you could afford and then drive it until it doesn't work anymore. Now that is great, but a lot of people would still go, screw you, old mate, I'm going to go buy my car. So we've got an example of buying a car for $65,000 and what the finance cost would be if you didn't buy it with cash. So let's say that you bought a $65,000 car with a 20% down payment with a 4-year loan term. The average interest rate, Mike, Ravi actually called Mercedes and was like, if you were to finance it through them, what would the interest be? 12.89%. 20% down payment is $13,000 upfront. Your monthly payments would be $1,400 a month for 48 months, making the total purchasing cost of the vehicle $80,000 on a $65,000 car.
And when we're looking at home loan documents, right, they spell the same thing out. And it's, I'm buying $1 million house, I'm going to pay back $2.5 million. And you're like, holy crap, that is a lot of interest. The difference between buying a house, which is an appreciating asset, and a car, which is a depreciating asset most of the time, and paying $80,000 over the long term is night and day. We are not comparing the two things here. When you are financing a car, generally speaking, it is a lifestyle choice because you want a nicer car, right? And I recently bought a car probably last year actually, and I bought it in cash, and it is very tempting when you are standing there and they're like, mate, you can get this or you can get this. To just be like, stuff it, I'll chuck 20K on tech and just, get a
really proud of you. What? It goes against your personality type.
It does, but at the end of the day, I don't need that car, right? And I definitely don't need it at this point in my life as now. I have mortgage debt up to the absolute eyeballs. It's a depreciating asset. There are far better things that I can be investing my money in. And you know what? I love my car. I don't need something that is, $20,000 more. It's just going to get me a nicer version of the same car I've got. I simply don't need it. So again, very tempting to go and put them on tick. But again, if you can buy it in cash, definitely do it.
We'll get you that Porsche one day.
Thanks, mate.
So there's 3 key takeaways. The first one is understanding the total cost of ownership. So just be aware, it's not just the cost you pay for the car, but the interest costs with that financing that Mercedes that we just spoke about. Based on the 24/10 rule, you'd have to earn like 165 grand a year. So make sure you are factoring in those costs. What other takeaways do we have, Mike?
Yeah, cool. So if you are looking at purchasing a car, look, use some guidelines to purchase responsibly. Think about, what am I buying? What is the interest rate? Do I need this? Is this just something to make me feel better, which most of the time it is, and they do make you feel better because they're amazing. Or, am I at a stage of life now where I need to be really focused on my expenses, what I'm buying, and the output of what I'm going to get here? And at the end of the day, the car is just going to get you from A to B, and hopefully it's not going to break down, right?
But will you look cool going from A to B?
Yeah, and to be honest, like the next thing here is obviously factoring in your long-term financial plan and your goals, right? And like, these are the sorts of things that do derail people a bit when they're kind of looking at their financial plan and their long-term goals. But you've got to have some fun along the way. Otherwise, you'll never stick to it.
Yeah, one of the my favorite episodes we've done out of the 200 odd is the difference between a rich household and a wealthy household. And buying a car on finance is definitely a rich household thing to do, not a wealthy household. Like Mike said, there are probably some exemptions to the rule, but just remember that buying that car without that finance of the car or putting that money towards the car, it's not helping you create passive income to give you financial freedom down the track. So you might choose to delay that a little bit because you want to enjoy yourself and you deserve it, whatever it might be. But you've just got to factor it in. How much longer is it going to take me to achieve what I want to achieve? And remember, delayed gratification. You want to get to a point in life where you're not like, can I afford this car? The only question is, what color do I want it in?
Yeah. And if you are wanting to look at a couple of cars, we had Greg on the podcast not too long ago, or if this hasn't been released yet, it'll be upcoming. Greg uses his cars for his charities and does some charity work with them. We're kind of like a Make-A-Wish Foundation thing, and they are absolutely beautiful. So, track him down and follow him on Insta.
There you go. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Please hit us with a sub, a review, and a like. And when will we catch you, Mike?
Next time. Cheers.